Good evening, everybody. I'd like to get this meeting started, so would you all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're going to start the night off with something that we really enjoy doing, and that's recognizing our children. Yeah, please. You're going to do it before.
Wrestling. Why don't you do softball first? Do softball first. Just wait 1 minute.
On behalf of the school committee and Superintendent Hicks, we would like to congratulate the Mount Hope High School wrestling team, Rhode Island state champions and division champions. Congratulations to you. But first, we're going, hold on. But first, let me talk about the softball team. On behalf of the school committee and Superintendent Hicks, we would like to congratulate the Mount Hope High School girls softball team, Rhode Island state runner-up, and congratulations to you. I will call up the softball team first, and then Ms. Thibodeau will come up and take care of the wrestling team, okay? The head coach, Craig Giarusso, are you here? The assistant coach, Nick Mandela. You here? I will call up the names, and they can line up over here, and we'll take a picture of all of them, okay? Riley Amaral. Julia Allen. Caleb Bouchard. Sydney Crowell. Sophia Ferolito. Mary Gerhard. Alice Grantham. Gabrielle Hollins. Lowen Levesque. Samantha Malafront. Madison Rosino. Julia Resenhausen. Hannah Rodricks. Kylie Rolando. Isabel Savignon. Chloe Simmons. Serena Souza. Grace Stevenson. Jada Sylvia. Katie Vieira. Thank you. And Elsa White. Go ahead. Thank you. Thank you. And we will now have Mrs. Thibodeau announce the wrestling team.
So I am so excited and proud to present to you the only state champion team in wrestling from Bristol Warren ever. They made history. They were an amazing team, coaches, boys. I've watched many of them since they were 5 years old wrestle, and to see them beat out the private school, actually destroy the private school that dominates the state, to dominate the regional VOTEC program that dominates the state. When we found out you guys won that night, we couldn't have been prouder. You made a lot of people very happy. You wrestled in extremely difficult situation. Normally you're a winter sport, and at one match in Pontiganza, it was legitimately 90 degrees. You guys were sweating. You had to wear masks. It was terrible conditions, and you still came out and you dominated for the season. We could not even imagine what you guys have gone through. Wrestling is a mental and a physically challenging sport, and you guys have done your best. You have worked very hard, and I could not be prouder of you guys. So congratulations. So now I want to introduce our coach. Actually, we ended up with the coach of the year and the assistant coach of the year, Eric Francis and Mike. They brought this team to what we have accomplished this year. And so our players were Elijah Bland, Ethan, so guys, come up. Elijah Bland, Ethan Bland, Pat Pitts, Matt Campo, Brian Conway, Carson Correa, Ethan Delahunty, Mason Furtado, Riley Furtado, Nikki Gomes, Corey Grifka, Liam Mallon, Dryston McLean, Brock Pacheco, Atlee Janess, Cole Ryback, James Thibodeau, Craig Veeder, and Josh Ivatulo. Congratulations, boys. Hold on.
Now I will be announcing individual awards. On behalf of the school committee and Superintendent Hicks, we would like to congratulate the following students on their recognition as individual athletes. Congratulations to in winter 2021. The first one is a high honor for me to call this one out because I watched her play many, many times. Providence Journal All-State Hockey First Team, Hobie Baker, Coaches Association All-State, Kat Bacher. Providence Journal All-State Hockey Ice Cream, Hobie Baker Award Boys Hockey, Jared Rago. Providence Journal All-State Gymnastics Second Team, Nora Prendergast. Rhode Island Basketball Coaches Association All Division Selections, Bruce McGuire, Mason Almeida, and Parker Camello. Anybody? We got one? Come up and be honored. You got a picture? Somebody got a picture? She's going to take your picture. Be proud. You did a good job. Thank you. The Rhode Island Gymnastics Coaches Association, all division selections. Nora Prendergast, first team. Reese Pavao, first team. Maria Tucciaroni, second team. Brooke Romello, third team. And Caroline Nash, third team. Anybody here? 2021 Rhode Island Hockey Coaches, all division teams. David Benavides, first team. Tim Burns, third team. Okay. 2021 Rhode Island Track Coaches, third team, all division. Medium schools, 4x800 relay. Sonia Bradley. Scarlett Drawbridge. Carson Medeiros. Emma Surratt. Rhode Island Track Coaches Award, Carson Medeiros. All Academic Award, Ella Drawbridge, Kylie Bouchard. Rhode Island Basketball Coaches Association, all class selections. Abby Rosino, first team. Elsa White, second team. Now somebody is here. All division selections, Abby Rosino, first team. Elsa White, first team. Isabel Savion, second team. Ren Ferris, second team. And Lauren Pays, third team. Are you representing the whole team? Okay. Okay. Rhode Island Football Coaches Association, all division selections, Division 2B. First team, Mason Almeida. AJ Brooks. Jordan Pompey. Atlee Jennes. Second team, Bruce McGuire, Brock Pacheco, Patrick Pitts, and Aiden Ramalia. Spring 2021. Three-time state wrestling champion. Providence Journal, first team, all-state, 2021, Corey Grifka. Good job, Corey. State runner-up, high jump, second team, all-state, 2021, Hunter Hayden. State wrestling runner-up, Providence Journal, first team, all-state, 2021, Brock Pacheco. Providence Journal, wrestling, second team, all-state, 2021, Atlee Jennes. Softball, second team, all-state, 2021, Riley Amaral. U.S. Lacrosse Academic All-American, United Soccer Coaches Association All-Scholar 2021, Ben DiCiapiri. How'd that go? 2021 All-Tournament Volleyball Team, Brady Thibodeau. Take your moment in the sun. Good job, Brady. With honor, I'd like to announce the Wrestling Coach of the Year Award, Eric Francis. I'll take the picture with him. As we say, we go a long way. Thanks, Eric.
Help me out a lot.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Believe me, that was a great honor. Wrestling Assistant Coach of the Year Award 2021, Mike Pereira. You want me to take my picture too? Another honor that I have. Volleyball Coach of the Year 2021, Warren Renzenhausen. I think we have a few athletes in this town, these two towns. I'm really proud of all of you, believe me. Baseball Brian Fell Award 2021, Ethan Leary. Cy Young Award 2021, AJ Jones. Sorry. What a boy. AJ Jones. Baseball League Most Valuable Player 2021, Ryan Nappy. Girls Lacrosse All Rookie Team Division 1 2021, Abigail Rosino. Good job. She lost count. Good job, honey. Again, another honor. Rhode Island Girls Lacrosse Coaches Association, All Division Selection, Honorable Mention, Division 1, Catherine Bacher. Now here's an important one. All Academic Division 1, Emma Hoyle, Kyra Boucher, Catherine Bacher, Jillian Greenslade, Annie Kraswicki. Rhode Island Boys Lacrosse Coaches All Division Selection. David Benavides, first team. Tim Byrne, third team. U.S. Lacrosse Academic All-State Rhode Island. Oliver Brown, Timothy Byrne, Jameson Canario, Nathan Chin, Jacob DeRoches, Joshua DeWolf, Ben DiCiapiri, Colin Dos Santos, Jackson Hani, Jake Marshall, Nathan Marshall, Jared Rago, Jack Silva, Tristan Tamulates. I'm sorry they're not here, but I will repeat the fact that it's a U.S. Lacrosse academic All-State at all high school. 2021 Rhode Island Boys Volleyball Coaches. First team, All Division, Brady Thibodeau. First team, All Division, Noah Rocha. Second team, All Division, Bruce McGuire. Third team, All Division, James DeMello. Stand up. Oh, I'm gonna take a picture. 2021 Rhode Island track coaches. Hunter Hayden, first team, All Division, Eastern Division. Second team, All Class, Class B. Second team, All State. Third team, All Division, 4x800 meter relay. Sonia Bradley, Carson Medeiros, Hope Tiska, and Brianna Marrera. Rhode Island Softball Coaches Association, all division selections. Riley Emerald, first team. Grace Stevenson, first team. Jada Sylvia, second team. Logan Levesque, third team. And Gabby Hollins, honorable mention. Rhode Island Baseball Coaches Association, all division selections. A.J. Jones, first team. Ryan Nappy, first team. Matt Brackett, second team. Cam Connor, second team. Ethan Leary, second team. Tara, maybe. Let her do the wrestlers. The wrestlers, you got it?
Yes, okay. Yes. So the Rhode Island Wrestling Coaches Association, Nicky Gomes, not only was he first team All-League, he got his 100th win this year. First team All-League and another 100 wins, Liam Mallon. First team All-League, Corey Grifka. Second team All-League, Josh Vitullo. Second team All-League, Brock Pacheco. Second team All-League, James Thibodeau. JV State Champion, Mason Furtado. And JV State Champion, Ethan Delahanty.
So just real quick before we close accolades for athletics, I would just like to say that on behalf of the athletics department, it was a real honor to be on your sidelines all through COVID. You kids were absolutely amazing in terms of, you know, rising to the occasion. You showed what perseverance really was through the entire, you know, year. It was amazing to see how you rallied around each other, how you came out to support each other, not just your own teams, but other teams. I couldn't be prouder to be your AD. So congratulations. I look forward to starting our new fall season next Monday. All right, go Huskies.
The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and I need a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Oh,
Aye.
what? Karen, you need to step away. You can't vote on this.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. I'll let the children leave, find their way out. Congratulations. Sorry it took so long, but hard to do on Zoom. Bob, did you have anything you wanted to say? No?
Just that I think this is, the accolades are just such a wonderful introduction of me to the community and the school committee and the school. It's incredibly impressive, and it was a joy to watch it and be a part of it.
Thank you for being here. All right, gentlemen, stay or go. Let's go.
Oh, maybe that's what. Oh, that's right. Oh, so, Mark?
Yeah.
No, she's not there. That's right, she's not.
I know. They had to walk over the caution tape, didn't they? All right, ladies and gentlemen, the next thing on our agenda is a presentation by the interim superintendent on the opening of schools. I'm going to preface this by saying that tonight, everybody's voice and everybody's view is respected. I expect all of you to be considerate of everyone who's speaking, and if not, then we'll shut it down. So with that, Mr. Hicks, Bob,
Thank you.
would like to get started?
Yes, and I just want to say, for those who are watching on YouTube, I know you're not able to see the slides, but if you go to bwrsd.org and right on our homepage, you can find a link to the slides. So not people here, obviously, but if you're at home, if you go to our homepage, you can find the slides. We put them up this afternoon. So as you know, we've come through an incredible year and a half, and we're back planning to reopen again. And I just wanted to walk through where we've been coming out of late winter 2020, school closures, distance learning, a partial reopening last year, vaccines become available in the winter, planning now in the summer of 2021, a call for a full reopening facing the Delta variant, and also the guidance has been moving as the variant has shown itself. So our focus is on the pre-K health and safety guidance for 21-22, what it means to us. Our focus here with this is to have school open and in person for as many students as possible, to get everybody back all the time in school full-time. That the one thing I think there was agreement on is that sending kids home and not in school was not a great thing. And we're trying to avoid that. And so our goal is to keep children in school and to avoiding quarantine. First, so I'm going to walk through the different stages of the guidance, what has come out in the guidance documents, and what how we're planning around it. So the first step is promoting vaccination, and we know from the guidance that vaccination is the leading public health prevention strategy to end the pandemic. We have 2 clinics coming up at Kickamuit Middle School. First one's tomorrow, and then you can get a second dose on the second clinic on September 9th. And if people come for a first dose at the second clinic, we can schedule a third clinic for people if it's needed. Our current vaccination rate for eligible students is 44% from the Department of Health. Statewide, the average is 39.5%, and the districts across the state range from 74% to 23%. So we do know anecdotally that we do have a very strong vaccination rate among our teachers in school. So we're thankful for that and look at that as a positive thing going forward. So one of the things that we had to deal with in school is physical distancing. It started last year at 6 feet, came down to 3 feet, and that guidance is changing. So it encourages stable groups, and that's something that we're looking to try and keep in place, especially where not vaccine eligible in the elementaries. If there are stable groups, physical distancing is not required. And that gets into how we organize our elementary classrooms, how the classrooms can be arranged, how teachers can organize students at tables and have small groups and things like that. So that's one of the important things that we're working on. And what is recommended is that if you don't have stable groups, if students are mixing groups and intermingling all the time, that you layer multiple prevention strategies. And they're talking there about masking, screening, upping your ventilation, re-emphasizing hand washing, things like that is even more important if you don't have stable groups. It's recommended that you keep 3 feet between stable groups. If you can keep 6 feet, it's better, because then if you have a case, you have fewer people that need to quarantine, because there's no quarantining if people are more than 6 feet apart. But the requirement is, and the guidance is, to maintain 3 feet between stable groups. And that maintaining of the 3 feet is not required in grades where students are eligible for vaccination. So the distancing is not required, or is not part of the guidelines, where students are eligible for vaccination. And for us, that's grades 7 through 12, which leaves us working on exactly how we'll handle this in the middle school, where we have one grade that's not, essentially one grade that's not eligible, 2 grades that are eligible. And the recommendations for physical barriers, the things around desks and things like that, those have been dropped, definitely found as not an effective tool. So physical barriers will not be part of our ongoing process. So the one everyone's been waiting to hear about. Face coverings. Face coverings are strongly recommended indoors, regardless of vaccination status. The exceptions for that are children under 2, those with a disability, and for whom a mask places a workplace risk. The top one is the recommendation from Rhode Island. The CDC recommendation is that masking where case rates exceed 50 per 100,000. Our current case rates as of last week, Bristol was 45.6, Warren 104.7. I just want to mention that Warren's population means that swings a lot. One case moves that 10 points. So Warren's smaller population swings that a lot. So if you take the populations into account and come up with a regional rate for the school district, it comes in at 664.5. A lot of districts, been talking among districts, and there's been a lot of conversations about linking face coverings to the case rates in your community, so that if the case rates are up, you would require masking. Should your case rates fall down below the 50, then that could be alleviated. What we're talking about internally to bring to the school committee next time is something along that lines, that where the case rates are high, have masking. If the case rates come down, eliminate the masking, and looking at reviewing that on, say, a quarterly basis. So that you don't want to be in a situation where it's on, off, on, off, on, off. But say on a quarterly basis, if the case rates are down, eliminating masking. I've gotten a lot of comments. I just wanted to share a few of the comments that I've gotten. I've taken away any identification for who they are. They're edited for length, not individually identified. I did this Thursday. I've probably gotten another 100 more over the weekend and today, but this is as of what I had received. So I'll just put those up there and give people a chance to read them over. I won't torture you with making you listen to me read them to you. Okay to go? Did I jump too? Yeah, okay, I did jump too. I pressed too hard. Did I go too fast? I'm sorry. Okay. And I will be reporting on the ventilation later on in the presentation. So one of the things that, besides what you read and the guidance that has alarmed me, is that around the country, we've already seen some schools have to go to online learning. And I think, to me, that's something that's we want to ultimately work very hard to avoid. So I've seen that we've seen some schools have to do that. That's very, very alarming to me. So I think that taking precautions to avoid that, I think that is something that's deleterious to the learning of virtually every student in the system, and something that we're working very hard to try and avoid. That's why we're thinking that way about masks. The next section is about screening students and staff. The Department of Health recommends, if your case rate is 0 to 9 or 10 to 49, no testing at all. If your case rate jumps up over 50, 25% non-vaccinated weekly, case rate 100 plus, 50% of non-vaccinated weekly. We will still be continuing to offer the Binax with parent consent. One thing I'm working on, trying to wrap my head around, if we don't know who's vaccinated, how do we know who to test? So we're kind of trying to wrap our heads around how we're going to do that, because the guidance and the knowledge about who isn't vaccinated seems to be in a, how do you figure that out situation. So that's one of the things that we're struggling with, among some other things that I will mention. Going into ventilation, we are still having our HVAC air turnover cycles at 6 cycles per hour, which is what's recommended. All HVAC filters changed on a 6-month cycle. Begin running the HVAC system a week before school opens. Get the air turnover. We'll still have our supplemental HEPA purifiers in place. Filters charged as per specifications, typically 12 months. One fear we have, we don't know if this will happen, is that with so many HEPA filters going into so many schools, whether or not there's going to be a bottleneck around getting the replacement filters. So we're ordering them. Want to get them, but just one of those fears that lingers into your back of head with all those HEPA filters going out into all those schools last year. Do they have a stockpile of filters? So just one of those back of your head fears that you worry about. So cleaning, disinfection, there is a big change here. The CDC and Rhode Island has basically said that the data was showing that the COVID is not very transmissible by touch. So the cleaning is going back to your routine once a day, cleaning every day, except if you have somebody who's sick. And if you do have somebody who's sick, then you have to go back and redo the sterilization procedures. But this is a big change in the guidance around cleaning. So again, once a week is sufficient. Immediately when someone is sick, we'll have the hand sanitizer on buses and coming into schools, and must wash hands or sanitize before lunch or a snack. And we'll take a look at that. That's when it gets really cold, that becomes so we'll look at how that's going when it gets really cold. When somebody's sick, recommended 7-day testing with quarantine, return on the 8th day. Close contact is within 6 feet for 15 minutes. And there is an exception to that I'll get to. Do not need to quarantine if you're fully vaccinated. If you've had COVID within 90 days, if all of these apply, and the contact is K-12 students, you're in an indoor classroom, and your 3 feet distance, you're masked, and your mitigation procedures are in place. So I took a while to wrap my head around what they're saying there, and I think what that comes down to is that if you have stable groups and are masked, the close contact goes from 6 feet to 3 feet. So it means it's harder to be if you do those things, your close contacts get smaller. And fewer people have quarantine. I was even reading this weekend a report that there's data showing that where students are where everyone's masked, even within 3 feet, close contacts don't need to be quarantined. But that's just some early data, and we're looking at what that might mean, and particularly how we apply that into lunch. So then we've looked at how that, looking at what worked and what didn't work last year. It's looking like quarantine will be an asynchronous option, probably through Google Classroom is what we're thinking about doing. Transportation, there's no capacity on buses. Bus groups are considered as stables groups. Masks are required by federal order. We're going to continue seating charts, open windows. A close contact on the bus is if the child's in a seat, it's going to be the seat in front of them, the seat behind them, and the same 3 seats on the other side of the aisle. And that's what the guidance calls for in terms of close contact for transportation. Oh, wrong button. So additional considerations, distance learning is no longer required. If someone wants to opt for that, that's their own option at their own cost. The only exception to that is we have to make accommodations where medically fragile situations come into place. So if you're dealing with someone who's medically fragile, the guidance calls for us to meet individually, like if you're doing a 504 plan with someone, and figure out the right situation for that child. If you're eligible, please get vaccinated. One of the things we're working on, we've talked about, and I think before we come back again next week, need to refine better. We're getting a lot of requests to resume the activities that used to happen in school, group activities, indoor activities, things like that. So what can we do? Under what conditions can we do them? How many people do we want indoors at events? Things like that. I don't have an answer for you on those things tonight, but those are the things that we're working on coming on guidance around those things. We're going to continue to use virtual meetings where it's possible. Where people have technology issues, we're going to set up a room for them in the school so we can do virtual meetings and provide the technology to people. We're looking at general attestation forms. I know if you were one of the parents who said, oh my God, did I fill out my attestation form today and the kids going to school? We're going to do one to cover the year and trust you to maintain that on a daily basis. And that is something that other districts have done and is okay. So you will be attesting once that you will do the check of your child for symptoms every single day. So you won't have to fill out the online form every single day. We're looking to make that change. Another place we're working is on lunch supervision and space. The principals want to get those gyms back. And we're trying to figure out if there's a way we can do that within the guidelines so that we don't have to have lunch there. So we're looking to see how normal we can make lunch for kids, how much like it used to be, and still be safe and still within the guidance. And that's with the space available, that thinking that might have to vary a little bit for schools. Are we going to need some extra supervision again, like we had before with separating kids at recess and stuff like that? Those are things we've started conversations about, but don't have firm answers on those things yet. That's still work we need to do before we come back to you next week. I think that's my last. Next step. School committee will have questions. Then we'll have public comment on the opening. The administration will be working on putting its plan and its policy together to bring back to the school committee on August 23rd, and then we have to have that into the Department of Education by August 27th. So those are the next steps for us going forward. And was that enough?
Yes, thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, before I turn to you, I'm going to turn to the members of the school committee first to see if they have any questions. Carly?
I don't at the moment. I wanted to just thank you for your very thorough presentation. The only question I had coming in was about when we were talking about positivity rates within the community and testing and how we were going to manage and kind of mitigate that, but it sounds like that'll be forthcoming.
Yeah.
That was my concern. How are we going to be able to assess the positivity rate if we're not testing and things like that? So I'm looking forward to that information. Thank you.
Community-wide, the positivity rate comes from the Department of Health.
Right.
That's not data we gather, but the Department of Health gives us.
Thank you.
Nikki? Mrs. Piper?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for the public to understand why every year we obviously send in physical forms to the school nurses, who I'm pointing at because they're right there, about our kids and what vaccinations they've had and their, when they've had their physical exam. But I gather that a COVID vaccination cannot be part of that physical form. And you mentioned some difficulties about some of these areas because obviously you don't know who's vaccinated and who isn't. So how do you know who to quarantine and for how long and all of that?
Right.
But it cannot be part of that physical form, correct?
Right. We cannot. I'm sorry. Yep. There's someone in the audience who knows this a lot better than I do.
When those forms were developed historically, we didn't have COVID. So there's no block for COVID. but I've received physicals where the physicians have written it on the side. The other thing that can happen is we can reach out to parents and ask them to provide dates. We can also, the school nurses, we can reach out to parents and ask them, if they say to me, well, Ellen, he got one in May and he got one in June, but I can't remember the dates. Do I have your permission to check the site and get them? And we can do that. Can we, the other time in the guidelines we received when we were in school last year about vaccinations, we can't go fishing. That's what I call it, a fishing expedition. But if there's a case in a classroom and we need to know who in the circle was vaccinated, we have to provide that information to the Department of Health. So in that case, for quarantine purposes, we can look up vaccination. If a kid says, I got some shot, but I don't know what it was, which they do. Sorry. So yes, there's a way to do it. We're hoping that, and everybody who's out there, we're hoping that you'll let your school nurse know if your child's been vaccinated. It will help a lot to get our statistics and to see if we can push ourselves to that almost 70% mark.
That's very helpful. Thank you. So there is some benefit to you potentially for letting your school nurse know, because it means your child is less likely to be quarantined if they're a close contact. Okay, that was my only. And the other thing is, so I'm not clear on what your recommendation is about face masks.
Sure. So I expect the policy we bring you back next week will have a tiered implementation where the requirement for face masks is linked to the positivity rate in the community in accordance with the CDC guidance.
Got it. Thank you. That's it for now. Erin?
I just had, thank you for that presentation. I had a couple of people write into me that just want clarity on whose decision this is and what it will, who this will ultimately come down to. And I know we'll be voting on it as a school committee, but I think it's a good question because I think it's always been complicated when you think about mandates versus recommendations and things like that.
So are you asking me, or is that?
Yeah, I'm asking you if you wouldn't mind
Sure.
to let the public and all of our community members and school committee members know what.
Sure. So as to my legal authority, I see someone else inching closer to her microphone.
Thank you.
For those of you who persist in wearing a mask, could you please speak directly into the microphone so we can hear you?
Peter. Last year when we were going through this, if you recall, it got to school starting and the superintendent actually in his letter to the district and to the parents put in that masks were required. That was before the state came out requiring masks. Mr. Hicks actually called me this morning and asked me if he had that authority. And what I told him is that I would do some research and look into it for this year. Thank you.
I'm all set. You, Erin, are you all set? I have a couple of questions. It's important to me that the children are in school every day. And it's important to me that we don't end up with students who are quarantined because of a possible close contact. Very important to me because I think that our children missed enough school last year already, and I don't think that they can afford to miss any more. The second thing is, if you start with masks, there has to be an end date. There has to be a reason not to wear them anymore. And I speak for that because as I spoke to you earlier today, when we were younger, our parents might have gotten a note from the school saying that someone in our class had the measles as a heads up, but we still went to school every day. And we didn't stay home because somebody had the measles. So that's why I'm looking at what is it that it's going to take, or maybe we don't have the answer, or maybe we don't start at all. I haven't completely. Guys, I told you. But I am interested in seeing how that's going to play out. You said quarterly, but I'm concerned that we'll get through this variant and then another one will come and another one and another one, and we'll never get out from behind being afraid of exposing ourselves to illness that we expose ourselves to every day. So that's what I'm going to be looking for next week, is some sort of, you talked about it, a tiered plan, but a plan that gets us out of this as quickly as possible. So that's just my comment on the thing. Thank you. Tara.
So I have a couple of questions. The revisiting was one of them, so I would. Oh, sorry. I also have no voice. I've been yelling at children all summer. So the revisiting question was one of my questions. So if we were to not choose to make it mandatory, or if we were, how would we evaluate that, and when would we evaluate that? My second question is recess and outdoor gym. You didn't address that in this presentation. And I know that at the end of the school year, the children were allowed to go outside without masks. So I want to know what if it were to be mandatory, what would that look like for recess and gym? My other question would be data from the 2021 school year. So we've collected, we've tested, we've quarantined, we've done a lot in the last 9 months. Can we have that data? Can we have it collected and coordinated? How many classrooms did we end up quarantining? Were there classrooms that were quarantined more than once? What did we do for virtual learning? How many days were some of the classes out? How many kids tested positive? I know that we tested every athlete every week. How many of those athletes got tested and tested positive? Percentage-wise. So I'd like to see data on what we already have done in the last 2021 school year. I also am curious if, because I know that I received a lot of emails. I apologize. I have not had a chance to read them. But I did notice that a lot of elementary school parents are worried because their children do not have the ability to be vaccinated. Is there consideration for partial? If we were to go to mandatory, is it partial or is it all or none? So could you do secondary because those children have the ability to be vaccinated? So I'd like to see a possible plan if that is the case, elementary, secondary. And then my other question is distance learning. So whether you be a person who doesn't feel safe with your child being in school if people are not masked, or whether you don't feel that you would like to send your children to school being masked. What is our plan? I know I spoke to the Department of Education today. They said it is not mandatory, but they did say that school committees can make the choice to bring on virtual learning. So I want to know what is our plan, because whether you are on one side of the story or the other, I think people feel strongly on both ends. And so what is our plan? I know that we talked about no virtual learning, but I don't think at this moment we can completely close that door. So what would the cost be for us? What would our options be? What would that look like? And those are my questions.
I can address some of them now,
Okay.
if that would help. I'll try and go backwards. What is in our planning right now is distance learning would only be available in cases of something like medical fragility, where it was a medical necessity. It was not any intention I'm sorry for not mentioning outdoors. Any plan that comes forth from us would be an indoor plan and would not affect students outdoors. And it is, I think both of you made comments about what's the way out of it. So I think my thinking is that infection rates are the way out of it. Mr. Hicks, we can't hear you at all. Sure. I'm sorry. My thinking is that the positivity rate is the way out of it. As the positivity rate comes down, the need for masking goes away.
I have one question on that, and I only worry because Warren has 3 or 4 nursing homes, and Bristol has a few as well. And I know that with the infection rates, that the only thing that makes me nervous with that is that if it gets into one of those locations, does that affect us, and how does that affect us? Can we really judge the whole community on convalescent sites?
So I don't know whether or not Bristol and Warren have more nursing home sites per capita than other communities. I don't know that. I only have the data from the Department of Health. I don't have our data from last year. I'll do what I can to get that for you. My concern is that it's a kind of a binary thing. It hits you or it doesn't. And because it hasn't hit you is not a guarantee that it won't hit you. So I'm thinking about.
Excuse me, Mr. Hewitt, we're not interrupting the people speaking here. Well, that's not my problem for you, Peter. I can hear them. And this gentleman here, please, we'll get to you, I promise. But if you can't hear, move your chair up.
So I'm sorry, I can get you historical incidence rates for the communities. That is evidently available. I had thought you were asking for the rates for the testing we did in school.
No, I am asking for.
Okay, then I
so
did
I'm
interpret
asking for
correctly.
because I know that we've acquired a lot of data.
Yeah.
In the having athletes, they were tested every week, and then we had many students and parents that opted for that as well.
Yep.
So I want to look at that because that was a whole year of information, and how did it affect us, and what did we see? Were our infection rates high? So that we also can monitor when we look at this year, is it different? Again, this is not going to go away, and how do we live with it?
Sure.
But I do want to say, because when I did speak to the Department of Ed, every child is required to get a public education or have access to a public education. So even though at the moment we have said we are not doing virtual, I would like to look at what the cost would be and what we would be able to present.
Sure.
Thank you. Sheila.
Thank you. So one of the questions I have, Tara and Marge pointed on a lot of them, so I'm not going to repeat them, but it said if they're quarantined, if a classroom is quarantined, because this one says within 6 feet, and if we're saying we're going to do the classes at 3 feet, will the whole class get quarantined? If that's what it kind of sounds like.
Yes, that could mean that, yes.
Okay, so if they get quarantined and they return on day 8, let's just say, does that mean they miss 8 days of class?
Yes, that's what it would miss, yes. Well, they're not in school for those days. They're not in school.
So they don't get distance learning. Sorry, this is kind of.
So we would do educational programs for them. They would not be without educational programs. We would do the Google Classroom and everything.
But they won't have access, because I'm just asking, because my 2 sons were quarantined multiple times, and they didn't have, they couldn't log into a teacher. They just had to go into Google Classroom, and I had to help them, which I work full time, which is a nightmare. So I didn't know if there's going to be an option that if a whole class is quarantined, can they if the teacher's quarantined, they're quarantined, can they log in with the teacher and distance learn?
That's something that we hadn't specifically talked about. I will bring that back
Yeah,
next time.
because from a parent that their kids were
Yep.
quarantined all the time. The other question I had is mask breaks. So I know that we say we do mask breaks, but having children in the district, that didn't happen unless at the middle school they had a sub and that sub would take them out because they know they needed them. I just feel that if this is really, if you end up being the decision maker and we're out of it, I just feel like mask breaks are needed. And I know people have, on both sides, have, you know, it doesn't affect kids, but it most certainly does. And it does have a huge social emotional impact as well as health impact to these kids to have them on for 6 hours. And remember, the majority of our schools are not AC'd in the summer, and it does get hot. So I feel that that is imperative. And just the reevaluation and the constant moving. And I think just for the record, I mean, I don't understand how, and it's not you, and I know, Marianne, you're looking into it, but there's not one person within this 9 who is medically qualified to make this crazy decision. And I just feel like, I mean, being a parent, and I understand both sides, and I've gotten probably 200 emails on both sides. I understand it, but at the same sense, we're not medical professionals, and I'm doing research just like everybody else is doing research, and I just think that this is completely insane, even to put it on you. And it is recommended, but it doesn't mean that it's mandated, and I think that's the big key.
I didn't ask to have to make this decision, yeah. I don't think any of you did.
No, ladies and gentlemen, I keep putting my hand up, but this part of the meeting is to ask these kinds of questions so that the superintendent can come back next week with the answers, rather than putting him on the spot right now and trying to come up with something. And hopefully we're asking questions that all of you have as well, so that you'll feel comfortable that we are doing our due diligence about our students. Karen, did you want to speak?
Sure. I just have a question about cleaning and the disinfection. So it says here, you know, clean and disinfect immediately when someone is sick. So that's kind of a broad term. I know we do have specific symptoms associated with COVID, which seems to be just about everything under the sun these days. But how, I mean, if somebody, one of the kids has a sore throat versus somebody's vomiting versus somebody has a fever or they sneeze, or how are we going to weed through all this? Do we have, I'm looking at you guys over there.
Looking at Ellen.
Oh, there's Julie too, okay. Do we
Are
have
you looking at
anything
me?
to follow? Yeah, do we have a protocol?
First of all, can you hear me in the back of the room? Can you hear me? Thank you. Yes, we do. We will follow the same guidelines. So you look at the probable case symptoms, and we'll follow the same guidelines. What will be different this year is that with parent consent, we can do symptomatic Binax testing before we send a child home. And then then if that comes back negative, we would recommend anyway, you check with your PCP, your pediatrician, whoever you use, and then you go further for PCR testing. But we will have to follow the same guidelines that if it's a probable case symptom, that we're going to need to send children home to be tested or seen by their doctor.
Okay, and I don't think, I'm not asking you this question because I know you have to know a lot of other things, but as far as like custodians and disinfecting, like sore throat is on the list, right, for
So you're talking about in regards to cleaning?
disinfection of the...
No, the area that would be cleaned would be, so if you, Mrs. Cabral sent a student to me because you thought that they were coughing too much and they were complaining of a runny nose, and they're in my space, then I would have to have a custodian come down after that person left, or I would clean it myself and clean that area that they were at. If it were to be a positive case, that would change how the disinfecting gets done. But just a regular sore throat and a runny nose, we don't have to bring out the big guns to start cleaning everything down. Is that what you're asking?
But the student would go home. Yeah, I'm
Yes.
just worried about interrupting class time every time, for disinfection purposes. Are the kids needing to leave the classroom for disinfection? And
I don't think, that's not my understanding. My understanding is if it's a positive case, the nurses' space would be treated differently.
okay.
Okay?
All right, thank you. Appreciate it, Ellen.
Are you done?
Not really, but I'll be done.
You can ask all the questions you want.
No.
Okay,
I'm all
Sarah.
set.
Thank you.
Sarah,
I actually,
I can't hear you.
well, I haven't really said anything yet. No. So I actually had a couple of really good questions sent in to me by email by a constituent about our possible liabilities with regard to the basic education program and also insurance and liability coverage. I don't know if we've considered those things. If the school district disregards the recommendations of national and state health agencies for safely protecting kids against COVID, and accordingly children with underlying health conditions are unable to attend school, might we be in violation of regulations in the basic education plan? Along those same lines, if districts decide not to follow CDC guidance, should we consult with our insurers regarding risk assumption and liability coverage? Insurers may be unwilling to cover liabilities created as a result of failure to adhere to public health guidance.
Did you understand that?
Yes, I can only say that I haven't spoken to our insurance company about that. I mean, they're coming to see me next week. I can ask them about that. I have felt personally about that. And I asked myself, should there be an outbreak and should there be adverse impacts? I know if I had recommended to you not following CDC guidance and then there were adverse consequences for that, I don't know how I could sleep at night. I mean, I feel responsibility for every child who comes to school here. So that is one of the things that weighs on me. So I think about that from my personal standpoint. But it also is a viable question as far as insurance and the like as well. But I do not have any information on that.
Was that what you wanted to?
Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everybody. All right. Yes, Mr. Cabral.
And I'll leave my mask on. Bob, I believe that anybody who has not been vaccinated should wear a mask. That's my opinion. Anybody who has been vaccinated, it's up to the parents to decide on that case. My question to you is, when a student comes in and says, I'm not going to wear a mask, what do we do and what would the penalty be for that student?
So I don't know what consequences you had last year. I mean, theoretically, that student should not be in class without a mask on. We would ask for the student to go home or provide. First thing we would do is provide the student with the mask, or ask the student to go home. But if we have a mask requirement, then I think that's a requirement that we need to be sure that everyone fulfills, and you cannot have students in school without masks if you have a mask requirement. Otherwise, you have a choice requirement. You either have a mask requirement or you don't. So selective enforcement would be would make the requirement meaningless.
So
I wouldn't, I would not be an advocate of suspending students or anything like that, because we want students in school. So but I would be an advocate for you need a mask, we'll give you a mask.
Or how about if we have them tested, or could they then not wear a mask?
Can you say again?
Yeah, suppose we send them to be tested and they come out negative. Could they then come to school without a mask?
Then I think that would open up a can of worms that I don't know how we would answer. But we also know that even if you've been vaccinated, you can still be a carrier and still spread it to other people, even though you don't get sick.
All right, thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being so patient. I know that you're passionate about this issue, and so are we. So we're going to start with public comment. I had limited public comment to 15 minutes. I will tell you that I will allow the people who have signed up to speak. However, if anybody crosses the line, public comment is over. So I would appreciate it if you would respect everybody who comes to the podium, whether you agree with them or not. Having said that, the first person on the list is Jessica Almeida. Yes, and then that's the end of the signups. Be my guest. You have 3 minutes, by the way, and our attorney will be timing.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Jessica Almeida, and I am here to talk about facts of mask wearing and why they should not be mandated in school. Fact: it is a rare case that a child contracts COVID-19, and it is very unusual that the child will get severely ill or die. And there is low risk that they will spread to other children, teachers, parents, etc. Fact: labs were told to stop using the PCR test because it could not determine between the flu or COVID-19. Fact: the mask did not prevent people from getting the flu last year. Not testing people for the flu contributed to the low flu numbers. Fact: do you know your mouth is the dirtiest part of your body? And as physician Miguel Escobar stated, I doubt, he quotes, I doubt anyone would want to sit and smell their private parts all day because that seems disgusting. And your mouth is 10 times dirtier than that. So why would you sniff in bacteria from your mouth all day and force that on our children and implore possibly more infections on them? Fact: masks negatively affect work and learning performance. Fact: masks lower blood oxygen levels and increase carbon dioxide. Fact: a study was done by doctors showed that masks worn by children 6 to 8 hours a day, even with short mask breaks, were contaminated with 82 bacterial colonies and 4 mold colonies. That is disgusting. Fact: the mask prevents our children's immune system from becoming strong and also prevents herd immunity. Fact: money and politics are playing way too much in determining what us citizens want to hear or not hear. Fact: do you know that the CDC and the FDA have lawsuits against them recently from withholding information and reporting false information to the public? Fact: germs create immunity. Fact: the news and media outlets are not science, therefore they must not be a reliable source. That's like students using Wikipedia for a whole report. I leave you with 3 questions and one last thought. Why is it that you can go into a restaurant and take your face mask off at your table and a child cannot do that at their desk? 2, this picture illustrates what most children have been doing all summer long and probably will be up until the week of school. But yet all of a sudden they step into a classroom and things change. Look how crowded. 3, how many times have you been to the doctor when you're sick and say there's nothing they can do because it's simply a virus? The issue of masked children is really a risk management question for parents and guardians, not you. The science is there. I hope you do make your decision based on facts, not politics and media. And if you in fact decide to mandate masks, I also expect the school committee and district will take full responsibility if any children get any of the adverse effects of mask wearing, since they have been disclosed to you prior to the school year. Here is a copy. I did email it to you, but for those who may not received or read my email prior to the meeting, I do have a list of the adverse effects from mask wearing. So let's stop putting fear ahead of the data, which is causing more harm to our children's future. Just let them be kids. Thank you, God bless, and wash your hands.
can't hear you. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, Ms. Almeida was from Bristol. Jeffrey Berg, if I mess up your name, I apologize.
That's correct, the way Chaucer spelled it.
Would you identify what town you're from, please?
Yeah, Jeffrey Berg. I'm from Warren, and you're going to hear a lot of basically two moral arguments, and both of them have a legitimacy. One is, let's not harm our children, and the other is, let's let freedom ring and have choices. And I think that we all need to listen to the other side and, you know, respect the other side, because we all like freedom and we all don't want to hurt people. So, so in that spirit, I'd like to make a few comments. I'm a physician. The data that we are in the midst of the fourth peak in this pandemic, principally driven by the Delta virus, mostly in unvaccinated people, but it can also affect vaccinated people, although they're less likely to end up in the hospital or die. But this variant seems to be more susceptible in children, and so data from previous viruses don't necessarily apply in this, and there has been a big uptick in the number of viral cases from COVID among children. And since more than half of the students are unable to be vaccinated in your school system, that puts them at risk. How do I know this? I've gotten this information from, I've been in medicine for more than 50 years. I've gotten this information from the national, international, public and private publications I've depended upon for virtually every single bit of data I've used to practice medicine for those 50 years. So if you don't believe me and you don't believe the data, I wouldn't bother going to your doctor, because your doctor gets the same information when they treat you for diabetes or high blood pressure or asthma or whatever. I'm a primary care internist, and I'm in the job. My job is risk-benefit analysis. When you come in and I tell you to do something or suggest that you do something, you're an adult, you make a choice. It's a risk-benefit, what I'm telling you. You may be like Irving Berlin and live to be 101 and have smoked cigarettes till the day you died, but the chances are you're not going to be that lucky. And so I'm going to tell you, you shouldn't smoke, or you should quit smoking, because the risk-benefit favors that. And so the question, the question here is there a risk, and is there a risk to not wearing masks, and is there a risk to wearing masks? And I would say that, contrary to the previous speaker's most passionate statements, I'd say there's virtually no risk to wearing a mask. Asians do it in all across Asia pretty much all winter long without any kind of a problem. And there is a real possible risk, just like that the children under, or the school attendees who you oversee are going to be potentially at risk with this rise in the incidence, both in vaccinated and unvaccinated adults and the children. So,
Madam Chair, time?
Yes.
Is that time?
You want to finish your thought? And
yeah. The only one last thing I would like to say is that there's a dress code. You can't come to school naked. You can't come to school in your underwear. You can't come to school in a bikini. I'm pretty sure shoes and shirts are required. So instead of saying this is a mandate, say it's a dress code requirement, temporary though it may be, as a way of sort of mitigating that. Yes. All right. I'm sorry. Sorry. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Everybody has a right to speak here who has signed up, and everybody has the right to expect that they can speak without being interrupted. I gave the doctor extra time to finish his thought. If any of the rest of you need extra time to finish your thought, I will do that as well. In the meantime, if you're not speaking at the podium, please do not speak out in the audience. And this, for me, is important enough that this is the last time I'm going to remind you of that. The next person to talk is Daryl Gould. Mr. Gould.
So good evening, my name is Daryl Gould. As I've said multiple times at this podium, I have 3 kids in the district. I'm not gonna get into a ton of stats because I know a lot of good people behind me who have tons of data to support our side. I am here to speak in opposition of any form of mask mandate. First, and it's not often I can say this, a lot of what I've heard and what I'm hearing about masks are just patently wrong. I don't need to provide any research on this because I could be considered a subject matter expert when it comes to respiratory protection. I own a company that focuses on identifying, correcting indoor environmental problems that are biological in nature. So I do a lot with hygiene, personal respiratory protection, things along those lines. And I'm not gonna get into all the reasons why. The short of it is the masks just simply don't work. Secondly, no one's really, I mean, we talked surface level about some of the detriments of the masking. And so we hear people say things like, I don't see a negative side of this. The American Association of Pediatrics has said there's a direct correlation to the spike we've seen with depression and anxiety in our children as a direct correlation to being masked for multiple hours a day. Secondly, we hear a lot about socio-emotional learning from certain people on the school committee. So it's interesting that, you know, the children who were most affected by masking were actually the most vulnerable. The youngest students, students with IEPs, if there are any parents in here who have a student who has any kind of speech disability or something on those lines, never mind just run-of-the-mill IEPs, they saw firsthand how the kids who were most vulnerable in the last year were left to swing in the wind. And we can't do this for another year. The science doesn't back it up. You know, the other thing I think that we hear about quite a bit is our decreasing enrollment, how this has been a challenge for our district. At tonight's meeting alone, you have 13 families who represent 20 children who, and I've talked to some of them, in part because of this issue alone, they don't want to wait to hear what your guidance is, okay? Basically, they've made a decision, we're not going to deal with it, we're pulling our kids out of the district. That's just the kids homeschooling, that's just this meeting. We've had other meetings where families are requesting homeschooling. We also have parents that you're not even aware of that have opted to go to private school. So if we're concerned about socio-emotional learning, if we're concerned about these big issues that come up all the time, I don't understand why we would make decisions that, again, exceed what your authority is. You know, the reality of this is, you know, we get painted as selfish because, you know, people think we want to make people sick. What's selfish is forcing other people to do things in defiance of science, logic, and reason because it makes you feel better. It's morally reprehensible and people shouldn't be doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fennessy, would you state where you're from?
I'm from Warren.
Thank you.
I'd just like to start by pointing out that the overwhelming majority of the students that walk through this door tonight made the personal choice not to wear a mask, and that's their right. Pandemic occurs over a wide geographic area and typically affects a significant portion of the population. While the majority of the population is now immune to SARS-CoV-2 reinfection, the 7-day average for deaths in Rhode Island is 0. But since the government has you all dwelling on cases, let's look at those. The 7-day average for new cases in Bristol County is 5. More than 3 weeks since cases began to climb, deaths have not. Roughly 8% of Rhode Island's ICU capacity is taken up by COVID patients. I point these things out to say this: we are no longer in a pandemic. The only thing a significant portion of this population is now being affected by are the attempts of some to continue their dog and pony show. 18 months of real-world comparative data proves masking is just that, a feel-good measure being pushed by the "we have to do something" crowd, to the detriment of anyone in this room that dare assert their rightful control over their own lives. The facts aren't on their side, and if anyone in this room wants to force masks on other people's children, they lost the moral high ground as well. Parental choice is not extremism, but force masking children over a virus that poses little to no threat to them certainly is. Oh, and about those stats I gave you, they're all from state and federal agencies, so some of you on the committee just feel free to accept them blindly with no further doubt of their accuracy. This doesn't end with this body voting to mandate masks. That's where it begins. We will not comply. We will not back down. Tread carefully on our parental rights. And I'd just like to close with this. This morning, we received a message from the new interim superintendent about the vaccine clinic. I'm now publicly asking you to correct the misinformation in that message as it relates to the vaccine stopping the spread of the virus. The CDC reluctantly admitted that the vaccinated spread the virus just as easily as the unvaccinated, and you admitted that 10 minutes ago. This is precisely why it is not the proper role of education bureaucrats to promote vaccines in their official capacity.
I have Bran and Trish Millard. Do I have that right?
I'm Brandon. She's going to stay there at the back, so
Oh.
everybody hear me okay?
All right, thank you.
All right.
Well, you're from Bristol, yes?
I am from Bristol, yes.
Thank
So
you.
I just have a short statement here. First of all, I do have some history with respiratory protection. It's what I do for a living. I sell to fire departments, PD. I sell respiratory protection products. So I know a little bit about this stuff. So, but here's just the statement that I have. So committee, first of all, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to everybody here tonight. Superintendent, thank you as well, sir. Welcome aboard. I'm here to ask you to make masks optional for this upcoming school year. Current Rhode Island guidelines strongly recommend that students and staff wear masks indefinitely regardless of vaccination status due to CDC recommendations, which, let's be honest, they change week to week, right? However, these recommendations are not a blanket call for universal mask use, but are specifically for areas that have substantial or high transmission rates, which Bristol Warren do not have. Numerous studies clearly demonstrate that universal masking in schools had little, if any, effect on COVID transmission. The data has been clear since last summer in regards to in-person learning. Schools are safe for both children and staff regardless of vaccination status. There are no studies that show that prolonged masking of children is harmless, and in fact, studies indicate that masking impedes learning and may contribute to cardiovascular and neurological diseases. Many schools around the country and the world have renormalized education. They have prioritized the physical and emotional welfare of children who are most affected by restrictions, both physically and developmentally. I urge the committee to put children first, and craft policies that consider the whole child. We're all connected with keeping our children safe from COVID, but many of us also wish to keep our children safe from lowered blood oxygen saturation and cognitive and neurological impairment. Committee, please consider making masks optional so parents can choose what they can do and for the best of their children. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Victor Bullard.
My name is Victor and I'm from Bristol. I don't think I can find it in me to sugarcoat my anger about the situation as a student in the Bristol Warren Regional School District. I truly don't understand how we want to stop the virus but refuse to do the measures that will stop it, such as masking, vaccinating, socially distancing, and so forth. For a lot of people in this community, personal choice means a lot, especially in this pandemic. Personal choice of whether to wear masks, get vaccinated, etc. However, in many cases, personal choice is put above public health and safety. Many are more willing to potentially spread disease than wear a cloth over their mouths, and that is where personal choice becomes selfishness. Some people don't have this choice. My friend and fellow rising sophomore at Mount Hope, Grayson Lettieri, and his family have given me permission to share his situation and their concerns. Grayson was diagnosed with cancer in the 3rd grade and battled it throughout elementary school when he stopped treatment in 5th grade and has been in remission for almost 5 years. During his chemotherapy, he experienced an anaphylactic reaction to polyethylene glycol, or PEG, which is in one of his treatments. The Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine, the only one currently approved for children ages 12 to 16, as some may know, contains PEG. The Moderna vaccine, though not approved for children yet, also contains PEG. Johnson & Johnson is the only COVID-19 vaccine that does not, rather containing polysorbate. However, it is unknown how long that will take to be approved for distribution for children. Last year, during school, he had the option to be fully virtual to protect himself as an immunocompromised student. This year, he will not have that option. Grayson, in addition to being immunocompromised, cannot receive the COVID-19 vaccine. This whole pandemic, he has had to wear masks everywhere. He has not gotten the opportunity to choose whether to do so or not. What are he and students like him to do to protect themselves from this deadly virus while going to school around students and staff who choose not to wear masks? If masks are not enforced in schools during the 2021 to 2022 school year, how can they stay safe? Students and families in vulnerable positions like this should not be forced to choose between their education and their health, their lives. For some, it is not the choice between being free and being a kid and wearing a mask. It is the choice between being alive and not wearing a mask. Parents like Grayson's mother should not have to decide between keeping their children safe and helping their children get a high school education. The bare minimum we as a community and you as a committee can do to keep immunocompromised and otherwise vulnerable students, families, and staff safe is to enforce mask wearing in schools this coming school year. If I'm being honest, I don't like wearing masks either, but my personal discomfort with them that happens on occasion does not go above other people's lives. Thank you.
Elaine Torf.
Good evening. Is this loud enough?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Torf. I live in Warren. I'm a physician trained in internal medicine and infectious diseases, and I work at the Bristol Medical Center. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my colleagues, internists, pediatricians, and specialists. I'm going to make it clear, I'm strongly in favor of a mask mandate for schools. Masks have definitively been proven to decrease transmission of COVID. They work by blocking exhalation of infectious droplets from an infected person and by filtering droplets from getting to an uninfected mask wearer. During a large outbreak on an aircraft carrier, the USS Theodore Roosevelt, people who wore masks had a 70% lower risk of testing positive. That's a fact. Several studies have shown that elementary school transmission is caused by inadequate mask use by students and less than optimal physical distancing. This was shown in an investigation of outbreak clusters in a school district in Georgia. In Florida, 1 week ago, we learned that 450 students were forced to quarantine after the first week of school. COVID infections in children have surged to the highest level since February this week. Children made up 15% of all new cases during the first week of August. Facts. While complications of COVID in children are less common, when they do occur, they're devastating. Among children and adolescents hospitalized with COVID-19, 1 out of 3 required intensive care, 5% required mechanical ventilation. They were put on a breathing machine. One sick child can infect classmates, family, elderly grandparents, and other vulnerable people around them. Studies show the vaccines decrease the likelihood of death and hospitalization, but they do not necessarily prevent infection. At the Bristol Urgent Care, we are seeing numerous vaccinated patients become sick and test positive, particularly in the last 3 weeks. They're sick enough to come in. These are not people staying home with sore throat and a runny nose. This is likely due to the profoundly more transmissible and possibly more deadly Delta variant. Our children are not vaccinated. Our jobs as adults and parents and leaders of this community is to protect our children. Their health and their lives are in your hands. A simple mask will save lives. Do not allow one of our children to become a statistic. The studies I have quoted have been published by the New England Journal of Medicine, the Journal of American Medical Association, by the CDC. I'm happy to provide details of these studies if anybody wants. Thank you.
Thank you. Margaret Richards.
Can everyone hear me? I'll use my loud former teacher voice the best I can. I wrote a lot of stuff, and I don't want to repeat things that people who are smarter and more educated in medical issues than me have already said. I thank you for the attention you're giving to this matter and for being open-minded and to listen to all points of view. I'm a mother of 3. My daughter is 5, will be entering kindergarten this year, and I have twins who are 3.5 in a local preschool as well. Professionally, I've made a consulting career out of teaching organizations and individuals how to collect, interpret, and use data for decision-making. That's what I do. That's my profession. I am not a health expert, but I am a professional in choosing data and assessing the quality of data and helping people be critical about sources. Just because it's written in a number doesn't mean it's true. Not all data is created equal. Some facts are factual and some facts are unfactual. That's just the way it is. You have to know how to look at sources, how to explore metadata, how to understand really what makes data quality. A member of the committee has already pointed out that there's no medical experts on this board, and I really, really, really strongly urge you to seek the advice of someone. When COVID started, I was the president of the board of my children's preschool in Chicago. One of the first steps when planning reopening was to identify health professionals among our parents to help us access and implement the guidance of state and city health and education departments, as well as to answer our questions and those of other concerned parents. Myself, I'm happy to help anyone on the school committee, anybody here who has questions about what they can trust, what they shouldn't. Happy to help you talk about how I have taught others to do that. And when I don't know the answers, when I look at something and I don't know, I defer to my colleagues here. I defer to my friends and family who are medical professionals. I went to Johns Hopkins as an undergraduate. I know a lot of doctors. They are all sick. They are all frustrated. They are all tired of the increasing cases that they're seeing, and I trust them. I also want to point out among the organizations that have made public statements in support of universal indoor masking at schools are the Centers for Disease Control, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the Rhode Island chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Office of the Rhode Island Governor, Rhode Island Department of Education, the Rhode Island Department of Health. I've also been in touch with the Rhode Island Associations of Physicians Assistants and family practitioners. Both are in the process of creating statements in support of universal masking in schools. I have a lot more to say. I support the idea of a tiered plan. I think that is absolutely necessary, and I urge anyone who's hesitant, who wants the idea of choice, to come up with a plan for getting us into it and getting us out for it. There are already guidelines, but as someone pointed out, very truthfully, the CD does change their recommendations, and that's good data practice. If you're looking at statistics from 5 and 10 years ago, and no one's updated recommendations related to health on those, those are not good sources of data in general. The last thing I do want to say, because someone made the point about asked about convalescence homes and if we have rates, we're looking at the rates with respect to convalescence home. I have a friend who works in a convalescence home. She is vaccinated But she has a 6-year-old daughter who is in school here. If she suffers a breakthrough case, which 5 members have happened to my family, 5 fully vaccinated members of my family have had Delta breakthrough cases, she can pass it on to her daughter who can't be vaccinated, who can then pass it on to her school. This isn't, I would love to say that everybody should have their own choice. I don't want my kindergarten that way, but I care too much about my kids' friends and my community to make my personal views guide my decisions.
Thank you. Jane Govnick.
Good evening. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to all of our feedback on this issue. Just going to find my statement here. My 2 oldest children will be entering Gutierrez Elementary School this year in kindergarten and 2nd grade respectively. Since the entire population of Gutierrez is under 12 years old, everyone my children come into contact with in school, aside from the teachers and staff, will be unvaccinated against COVID-19. To think that there is even a consideration of not mandating mask wearing in school is unconscionable to me. In addition to this, I have not, when I wrote this, I hadn't heard anything about how else the mitigation would be for COVID-19. I appreciate your slides, so thank you for that. When the last year ended in June, I hoped my children would start the school year as close to normal times as possible, as I'm sure most parents did. I would, of course, rather my kids not have to wear masks in school. I would not want to wear a mask right now if I didn't have to. With the Delta variant raging across the country, I feel it is a necessary step in protecting not only our children, but our entire community, and I'm not the only one. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends universal masking in school. Former Surgeon General Adams, Trump appointed, I may add, as well does. I work at Roger Williams University, where our community vaccination rate, including students, faculty, and staff, is over 90%. It's 44% among eligible people in our district. Even still, in light of the regional trends with the Delta variant, as of this week, the university will require indoor masking for all students, faculty, staff, and campus visitors, regardless of vaccination status. I am proud to work at an institution run by people who look to experts, not their own personal beliefs, to make decisions about the health of the community. An institution that remains dedicated to helping prevent further spread of COVID-19 and to protecting the health of everyone in the community. I hope to say the same about the school district in which I have my children enrolled. Thank you.
Sheila Dobbin.
So this has been an unimaginably hard couple of years, and I'm guessing that most of you, when you made the decision to run for school committee, had no idea that such an important decision would be in your hands. And if I were in your shoes, I imagine I would feel pretty overwhelmed by the responsibility of setting policy that would affect the health and safety of 3,000 students. I would be distressed that this decision had been passed to me instead of being handled by the governor. And I think I honestly would be really afraid of liability exposure. And if I'm honest, I would probably be worried about the consequences of disappointing pockets of my constituency, maybe even afraid about how those with the loudest voices might respond to decisions I made that they disagree with. Right now, you guys have a room full of people who have strong opinions. You've been hearing from them by email over the past few days. And there's a lot of noise, and honestly, you would probably most benefit from being able to just reflect in a quiet moment on the purpose of your service as a school committee member. And in the hierarchy of needs of students, where do health and safety fall? Where do health and safety fall in comparison with student comfort? Masks have been proven to stop the spread of COVID. If you are unable to accept the multiple sources people ask you to consider tonight, perhaps we can look to our own Bristol Warren data. I feel like it's been referred to many times over the past year that masks were effective in our school and did stop the spread. There was little to no transmission when we were all wearing masks. I urge you to consider also the following data point. The 7-day case rate for this August, in my understanding, is that it's double that which it was for last August when we did have universal masking. Especially for our youngest students, K through 5, the only thing that is different is that most teachers are vaccinated, which is great, but we now have a variant that is more transmissible and impactful. Unmask our children is what we all want, but it is only self-discipline and self-sacrifice that will get us there. Because if we do away with masks now, we will set ourselves back, and we may quickly return to the harsher methods of controlling the virus that truly limit our lives and our kids' ability to go to school. So that means a whole lot of disruption. So masks represent a controlling of the potential chaos. So you have a hugely important decision to make. It's not the time to waver in your commitment to our students and their well-being. This does not mean that we have to wear masks all year. Perhaps we reevaluate at the end of the fall. I hope you can reflect and find some self-awareness. You guys have already noted that this might fall outside of your own personal expertise, and therefore choose the most conservative policy, knowing that it could later be loosened up as the pandemic hopefully evolves in a better direction. And in an effort to advocate for the rights of all, I want to insist that you offer a virtual learning option for those who feel that mask wearing is oppressive or seriously affecting the ability for their own children to learn. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry and Jacob Ledsworth.
Hi, so I'm from Bristol. I'm here this evening to express how important it is to me, I'm sorry if I cry, I get emotional, that we get to choose whether our children wear a mask or they don't. Providing parents with the choice to determine their own level of comfort is only a solution that fulfills both parents and children's specific needs. According to the CDC, cloth masks can protect against transmission for up to 27 minutes, and I can send you that. 27 minutes that mask will protect them for. What about the other 6.5 hours that they are in school with these masks on? I can tell you those 6.5 hours directly affected my son last year, physically and mentally. Having had ear surgery 5 times in his life, which has caused some permanent damage to his hearing, I'm sorry. He would come home so frustrated in class he couldn't fully hear a lot of the discussion between the teacher and his peers. He did sit up in the front of the class, actually, in mostly all of his classes for this reason, but he still couldn't hear everybody in the room. Not being able to hear the whole conversation or discussion left him out most times. He wanted to participate. He had his own input, but lack of hearing due to everyone's mouth being covered, he didn't feel comfortable. And when I would ask him why he wouldn't just ask them to repeat himself, he actually would say, "Mom, how many times can I ask him to repeat themselves without feeling dumb? My son should not have to feel dumb going to school. How can he succeed in school without feeling confident and comfortable engaging in his daily activities?" The effects of mask wearing for our children are measurable, and they have been for some time, but they have been ignored. There was a large-scale survey of more than 25,000 children, and they found an overwhelming majority of children reported adverse effects from wearing face masks. The effects included excessive CO2 in their bloodstream, profound cognitive impairment, confusion, and loss of consciousness. This should be of no surprise, as the public health officials knew from the beginning that forcing our children to wear a mask could be counterproductive. In fact, they knew masks themselves were ineffective and could spread disease because it has been proven, and I can send you these links, by the largest study of the use of medical masks and cloth masks. It showed it was 13 times higher risk of infection in cloth masks. And I quote, penetration of cloth masks by particles was almost 97%, medical masks 44%. What is our end game? COVID is a virus, and it's not going away, at least not at this point. The CDC's director said, and I quote, fully vaccinated people who get a COVID-19 breakthrough infection can transmit the virus. So why should we put all this responsibility and possible harm on our children? Why are we not focused more on a solution, like better indoor air quality for our schools? There are options for indoor air quality that will kill COVID and viruses. How long are we going to hold our kids prisoner to a virus that does not significantly impact them? We need to prioritize our children and their needs.
Thank you. Mr. Ledworth? Yeah, could you hang on one sec, please? Yep. Mr. Hewitt, you have interrupted 4 people. You are off the comment list. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, guys. It was a very safe
Mr. Ledworth.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing me tonight. I do have 2 children in the Bristol Warren school system. We are from Bristol. As most parents, I want to protect my children as best as I can. And I am concerned about the pending mask mandates. I want to give my children the tools to grow up with be good stewards to the environment, be kind to others, successful and future leaders for generations to come. While in school, I believe it is their right not to have their learning process hindered, physical or mental well-being negatively impacted. There are studies saying that cloth masks help stop the spread of COVID, and there's others that say they don't. Healthy children under the age of 18 are extremely low risk of serious illness from COVID-19. Less than 1%, it's actually closer to 0. Most that contract the virus have mild or no symptoms. Over 9 times as many children die from accidental drowning every year in the US than have died from COVID total. That's on the CDC website. According to the latest numbers from the CDC, 0.05% of all COVID fatalities in the United States are children under the age of 18. Totals 423 deaths. I'm not making, I'm concerned about everybody, but I'm saying compared to the 3,960 deaths from drowning, we have to look at this and, make the choice based on the people in the community. My question to all members of the community, how come it's become the job of our children to protect the adult population? In my mind, the adult population should do what's necessary to protect themselves without affecting the well-being of our children physically, mentally, and academically. Mass deprives our children of oxygen, causing brain fog, confusion, which hinders the learning process. You guys wouldn't have mass breaks if it didn't. I actually work physically. I've tried to work out physically, and I get dizzy and can't think. So there's no way that the study says that doesn't happen. Wearing a mask can also change social interaction, causing children not to read and see facial expressions, which hinders how they'll respond to social cues. The community would be better served by allowing our children to have normal childhoods without mandates being forced upon them that will affect their learning process, long-term mental and physical health. Last year, mental illness did pick up in the teen population, as well as teen suicide. There is data on that. I do think it would be in the best interest for the school systems and all public buildings to do more air filtration, install the systems that kill COVID-19, the air purification, and I strongly disagree with the mandate for our children to wear masks or any other mandates that could have negative outcomes for our children. Parents should have the choice. We want to protect our children from the virus. They are at such a low risk of serious harm.
Thank you. Olivia Park. You still here?
Almost there.
First, I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I am here to express my thoughts and concerns regarding a mask mandate as the school year approaches. We began distance learning towards the end of March in 2020. The rest of the school year, my sophomore year, was finished at home, which for me resulted in depression and lack of motivation. As I was beginning my junior year, I chose to do distance learning again, even though it was super tough the year prior. I made this decision due to the prison-like atmosphere that was throughout the school, such as being forced to wear a mask, barely being able to socialize, the one-way hallways, as well as many other things that contributed. I and many others who could not tolerate a mask for a variety of reasons were simply excluded from in-person learning altogether. I'm approaching my senior year of high school and I cannot do distance learning again. Many schools around the country and around the world have successfully renormalized education. They have prioritized the physical and emotional well-being of children who are most affected by restrictions, both physically, mentally, and developmentally. Last June, during a heat wave, the Rhode Island Department of Health decided that it was unsafe for students to breathe freely in muggy, unair-conditioned classrooms, even with such extremely low infection rates. I'm wondering, how is that logical? When will it be safe for us to breathe without masks and finally feel comfortable going back to school? The answer is never. This will never change unless changes are made. It is not fair for us to go through this. Mask mandates have caused a negative impact on my sisters and I, as well as several others, both physiologically with daily headaches and lack of motivation to even get up out of bed, as well as emotionally. We are at extremely low risk of COVID complications, and medical literature constantly indicates that we are not the primary method of viral transmission. Cases do not mean deaths. May I add that it has a 99% survival rate. We are barely spreading or getting COVID. The burden of COVID virus, with all of its variants, cannot continue to fall on the shoulders of us, children. We are the least affected by COVID, yet the most affected by masks. I urge you to prioritize us by making masks optional this year. Optional masking would not bar anyone from wearing a mask, but it would allow us, as well as families, to make choices based on our individual circumstances and needs. Where is the study that proves masking us for 6+ hours per day indefinitely has no cognitive, social, mental, psychological, or physical risks? Both the CDC and the Rhode Island Department of Health have yet to provide these studies to anyone, maybe because there is none. There is, however, a study in Germany that consisted of nearly 26,000 children, a nationwide database of masking children for 270 minutes per day. This study showed that children were experiencing irritability, headaches, difficulty concentrating, less happiness, reluctance to go to school, discomfort, and fatigue, all of which I have experienced since this pandemic has started while wearing a mask. A public records request was submitted to the Rhode Island Department of Health for the safety data that was used to determine that we children can safely wear a mask for prolonged periods without negative health impacts. The Rhode Island Department of Health produced one study of only 47 children that wore a mask for 30 minutes and are using that to determine that thousands of children can do so for 6+ hours a day. Can I finish? I only have a few more sentences.
Yes, you absolutely could finish what your thought.
A public records request was submitted to the Rhode Island Department of Health for the safety data that was used to determine that we children can safely wear a mask for prolonged periods without negative health impacts. The Rhode Island Department of Health produced one study of only 47 children that wore a mask for 30 minutes and are using that to determine that thousands of children can do so for 6+ hour school days during gym class and during sports. This is unacceptable and, again, just not logical. Prolonged mask use lowers blood oxygen levels, which impairs immune function, neurological and cognitive function, and stresses out the body in numerous ways. Wearing a mask increases heart rate, respiratory rate, and body temperature, causes headaches and fatigue, and has many other adverse effects.
Olivia, can you wrap it up?
Yep. Vulnerable adults can no longer demand that we be forced to mask up. The vulnerable adults can either wear a mask or accept a readily available vaccine that will supposedly save lives. They can also choose to stay out of certain situations and can no longer ask us to put ourselves in danger by wearing a mask for several hours to protect adults who have options when we don't. Respectfully, take some vitamins and get outside.
We're almost to the end, folks. Vanessa, I know I'm going to... I know I'm going to mispronounce that no matter how I try.
Disjarnis.
I'm sorry.
Nice tries. I'm Vanessa. I have 3 kids in Bristol Warren schools. I've worked in the medical field for 12 years. I'm a registered nurse with a bachelor's degree, currently working on my master's degree. I've worked in hospitals since 2019 and throughout this pandemic. Just a quick response to the school nurses having access to the state vaccine databases and to vaccination status of students. The Department of Health calls every student that is tested positive or has to be quarantined, which they are the one that ask if the child is vaccinated or not. They're a third party that is neutral. I'm not telling anyone what to do, what not to do. I would not force any medical choices onto other people, never mind other people's children. Every person has different ideas, different feelings, and different personal medical issues that I have no right to question. Some kids aren't able to wear masks, physically unable to wear masks. Some kids have had reactions to masks, to the paper, to the material, to the metal insert. I've seen children with swollen eyes, with rashes all over their faces due to mask wearing. Some kids wear glasses and their glasses get fogged up throughout the day, causing vision problems. I'm going to share a personal story. My son had to quit the football team because he almost fainted twice because he was forced to wear a mask while running outside, running in the gym, doing sprints. This is his sophomore year, and to make the football team was a big accomplishment for him, and it was pretty devastating to all of us. My other child witnessed a friend get yelled at for having his mask below his nose while he was socially distanced in a classroom with nobody sitting around him. Then he was reprimanded by his coach later that day because the teacher had gone to the coach to complain about the student having his mask below his nose. Keep in mind, we just asked a group of over 12 kids to cram together for pictures with no masks, being kids being kids. What difference will that make in 3 weeks? Kids are in here, everyone's not wearing masks. In 3 weeks, we're gonna mandate these children to wear masks for 7 hours a day. Making masks optional allows all parents to have a choice, allows each parent to take their own child's individual needs into consideration and make the personal individual choice for their own child, deciding what is best for their own children. I ask that you make masks optional. Let kids be kids. Don't punish our children because you're feared. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Chitester. Mr. Chitester, you're stepping up to represent yourself. If you're stepping up to represent the union, then I think that you need to have the discussion with Mr. Hicks.
A bit troubling if you do not want to hear from the BWEA and the
I didn't
teachers
say
of this
that,
district
Mr.
publicly.
Chitester.
That is the message that I'm getting. I would like to go ahead and read my statement, if I may. Okay. Good evening, I'm Brian Chitester. I am a parent and teacher in the district. I've had a number of students sitting in this room, in fact, and a few, I think, coming in this year. But I'm also the vice president of the Bristol Warren Education Association, and it is in that capacity that I am speaking tonight. The BWEA surveyed our roughly 270 members on the reopening of schools in the 2021-22 school year over 4 days, from August 12th to 15th. So this is very recently. 230 members responded in that time, and here's what we found out. 92% of the respondents are vaccinated, with an additional 5% who are not, and 3% who prefer not to say. This is above the general vaccination rate of 74% for adults in Rhode Island, and well above the reported vaccination rate of 44% for Bristol Warren students in grades 7 through 12. Now, on the question of distance learning, and full virtual learning is a particular thing separate from hybrid. 82% of respondents are opposed to hybrid teaching, wherein a portion of the class is online, while another portion is in person. An additional 14% think it may be unavoidable, even if undesirable, while only 4% are not opposed to the practice. 42% of respondents believe all students and staff should wear masks indoors, which is the current CDC guidance for schools, while another 34% believe only unvaccinated people should be required to wear masks indoors, which was the CDC guidance in general back in the spring. 23% believe masks should be optional for all, and only 1% believe masks should be disallowed in schools. It is worthwhile noting that on the mask question, 76% of respondents effectively believe that all children in grades K through 6 should be masked. The same would not necessarily be true for grades 7 through 12, but as a number of respondents pointed out, trying to enforce a two-tier rule at the secondary level would be a disciplinary nightmare. And honestly, we do not want to have disciplinary issues. As difficult as it would be to differentiate between vaccinated and unvaccinated students in a classroom, and a two-tier system that we set up that would be uncomfortable for students, it would be impossible for teachers to know the status of students in the hallway. Thus, such a rule would effectively be unenforceable, and nothing is worse for schools than unenforceable rules.
Mr. Chedester, we're not negotiating here on what you want and what you don't want, what you believe and what you don't believe.
I'm simply stating what teachers' opinions are.
You heard what I said, and you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Please allow me to finish. Given these results, it is the position of the BWEA leadership that we want to see all students in our classrooms this fall, and we want to do so safely. If safe in-person instruction requires masks and vaccinations for the time being, then we're in favor of it. Given our own high rate of vaccination, we do not see the need for a mandate on that account, but we want to strongly encourage parents to get your eligible children vaccinated, and please send them to school with masks. Your cooperation on these matters will allow us to deliver education to your children safely and in person. Thank you.
And the last speaker tonight, Linda Kuehl. No, Peter, please sit down. It was unfair of you to interrupt 4 people, Peter. Sit down or I'll ask you to leave.
When I suggested she speak to the mic so she can be understood her, that's not a heckle, that's not an interruption. That's a beneficial suggestion to her because she may not be used to.
Please sit down, Mr. Hewitt.
So I think you're on order.
Madam Chair, it's time to recess.
Public comment is now over. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen.
Motion to adjourn.
I need a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much.